Hello, dear guests, colleagues, and friends. As the room is filling, I'm waiting another minute before we get started. All right. Dear guests, dear colleagues, dear friends, welcome to today's event, Spotlight on Ukraine's businesswoman, Anka Feldhusen. Anka Feldhusen, welcome to the platform. We're honored to have you with us today. My name is Karin Losse. I work for GIZ and I represent the secretariat that supports the German platform for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Before we get started, as usual, a quick technical note. Today's event will be recorded, and by staying in the call, you agree to that. And you also agree that the recording will be shared on our website. So now is the moment to leave, but please stay. Just some background on the platform. We have many new faces here, also some experienced listeners and viewers, but let me give you the background on the German platform for the reconstruction of Ukraine. It is an initiative of the German federal government that brings together stakeholders who are based in Germany and who are interested and active in the reconstruction of Ukraine. The main objective is to make Germany's contribution to reconstruction more effective and sustainable through more exchange, more information, and stronger networks. Many of you have asked us to regularly offer events such as this one today on current studies and analyses, as well as important actors and institutions in the context of Ukraine's recovery. And therefore, we are really pleased to have the Business Ombudsman's Ombudsman's Office and the Business Ombudswoman. I'm struggling with that, sorry. Anka Feldhusen with us today, who will introduce us to her work at the Business Ombudsman Council in Kiev. Most people know you, Anka Feldhusen, but let me give you some background on your vita. She is a German diplomat with more than 30 years of experience at the Federal Foreign Office. And until her appointment as Ukraine's business ombudsman, she served as the director for civilian crisis prevention and stabilization at the German Federal Foreign Office. She also has extensive diplomatic experience in Ukraine. From 2019 to 2023, she headed the German embassy, where she played a key role in the development of German-Ukrainian relations. She oversaw the evacuation and restructuring of the embassy following the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in February 22. And from 2010 to 15, she served as the deputy head of mission in Kiev. And from 94 to 97, she headed the embassy's press and protocol section. In February this year, and now we are getting started, Anka Feldhusen returned to Kiev. Mrs. Feldhusen, I'm very happy about the opportunity to have the conversation with you about your role as the business ombudsman in Ukraine. The central element of today's event, as always, is the question and answer session. And after our talk, we will have time to open the floor to questions and comments from the audience. Dear participants, please feel free to already post your questions in the chat so we can take them up later. Now, Mrs. Feldhusen, could you just start by sharing with us what your role entails? What is the Business Ombudsman Council? And also, what was your motivation to take up this new role?
Yes, thank you very much, Karin Losse, and hello to everybody from Kiev. Indeed, the Business Ombudsman Council was established in 2014, right after the Revolution of Dignity, as actually the first anti-corruption institution. It was based on a memorandum of understanding between the European Union and Ukraine, the new government in Ukraine. Since then, the mandate of the Business Ombudsman Council has been widened. There are institutions that really deal with anti-corruption fight. We are here to defend the interests of Ukraine, of business in Ukraine, be it Ukrainian or foreign, when they feel either unfairly or illegally or dishonestly treated by the Ukrainian government. This is a very concrete work. We receive complaints from business in Ukraine. In the 11 years of our existence, we have received almost 15,000. And that gives us a lot of very concrete data that we can then take to the Ukrainian government, because the second role, and especially my role as the business ombudsman, is to be an advisor to the Ukrainian government. We have a kind of hybrid function. And by looking at the complaints we get, we can find out which systemic problems there are in Ukraine. And before you go on to more concrete questions, perhaps the one thing that makes you stumble over business ombudsman Ukraine, I just kept it at this because it would have taken a lot of time and money and nerves to change all our legal documents to business ombudswoman or something.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that for me. And thanks for your answer. Now, as you mentioned, the office was established in 2014 as an anti-corruption measure and is funded by EU and EBRD. I'm assuming that you're a very independent ombudsman. Has it ever been an issue, and how independently can you act in this role?
This is exactly, I think, our unique selling point. We are perceived as a very independent institution because we are really equidistant between business and the state. We also do not take on all the business complaints. We do our own due diligence when we get a complaint. And if we have doubts about the integrity of the business concerned, we refuse to take on the complaint. At the same time, we talk to the government on a regular basis, to state institutions, with some of them, like the State Tax Service, that we have most complaints about every month. And over the 11 years, we have built up a level of trust between our team and state institutions and business that makes us really appreciated by both sides. We sometimes get thank you letters even when we're not successful with a case, just because business feels that it was heard, that it has more arguments that it can then use in the trial phase, because we work in the pre-trial phase. We work cost-free for the business. And we have very short deadlines. We, on average, end the process after 90 days, so the business doesn't have to wait very long, which is usually the system, the case if you go into the judicial system in Ukraine. That can last for years. So I think, yes, we are perceived by all sides as very independent, even though we are funded by the multi-donor account on Ukraine, administered by the EBRD here. But here in Ukraine, since I came back in February, I realized that people see us as very, very independent and on our own.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you are not a corporate lobby group. Why is this so important in your view?
This is always that I tell business from the first minute when I meet them, and I meet them everywhere. I have started traveling to the regions, and the regions that are unsafer than others, we're doing online meetings with business because they're very interested. And I pointed out to them right from the beginning, we're not lobbyists for business. Ukraine has a lot of business associations to do that. Big international ones like the European Business Association or the American Chamber of Commerce. Germany has its Außenhandelskammer. And there are lots of Ukrainian ones also, and they lobby interests of the business. We really work on concrete cases of misconduct or whatever of the state institutions, and we help business to defend its right. And as I said, if we have doubt about the integrity of a business, we just do not work for them or with them.
Thank you. And you've already touched on that a little bit. Is there, or where is the line? I'm imagining it's a fine line between ombuds work and also some political influence at times. Is this also something that you are experiencing?
Let's put it like this. It's more the fact that sometimes the government is a little bit puzzled because there are lots of think tanks in Ukraine that work on systemic problems of the Ukrainian investment climate. We're not the only ones speaking about that. I think what makes us unique is the fact that we have a huge databases of concrete cases where business encountered problems investing in Ukraine or continuing its work. And that makes us more trustworthy to the government. They know that we're not, as I said, lobbying interests, but we try to get rid of very concrete problems that there are in the Ukrainian system. And these can be very different. Most of them are not even dishonest or illegal behavior. Many problems are the refusal of Ukrainian state servants to take on responsibility. Yeah. And they try to apply the law to the letter, and Ukrainian laws are long and tedious and difficult to implement. Then the other point that we work on very often is when there is a court decision, state organs sometimes just don't implement that. And then we have to remind the state there is a court decision, and the company needs to be sure that you will implement that after they went through the process. So, yeah, it's a fine line, I think. And perhaps let me come back to the question of you started with, which I didn't answer, to the motivation I had to come back. I think what makes my work more efficient here is really the fact that I know the players on the state side very well. I know almost all the ministers from my time as ambassador. They know me. They know that I have always been critical in a way that I want this country to succeed, but I have seen the weak points, and I have, as far as I could, taken them up as ambassador or now behind closed doors and tried to change things. But as ambassador, we had, if you remember, the G7 Reform Support Group. And when we really did not agree with something, we issued a tweet, and that was usually very effective. And at the same time, my job now has in its job description this funny sentence that I read when I applied for it. You work on a name and shame basis, meaning if there's really something that we cannot solve and the government really doesn't want to listen to us, I talk about that in the media, and that usually gets the attention.
Wow, yeah, that's very impressive. I mean, I think that the trust issue is really key here. Talking about trust in Germany, not everything is fantastic, but over 90%, at least that's my numbers are telling me that, of citizens trust public authorities. In Ukraine, this trust is lower, even though, it is lower. How do you intend, I mean, I think you already touched upon that, to help rebuild this trust between the state and the private sector? And is it even possible to create a stable investment climate in a country like Ukraine at war?
On the first question, except for my personal role, I think what our unique selling point is really the trust that has been built up between our team, which consists mainly of 20 lawyers, specialists in their fields, mainly tax lawyers, and the state institutions that we meet on a regular basis. As I said, the State Tax Service on a monthly basis, the Bureau of Economic Security that has just been relaunched. We will probably need like one every 3 months, with the Prosecutor General the same, with the Customs Service. And over the years, the colleagues there have seen that we have valid arguments and they discuss them with us. And on these expert group meetings, we only kind of escalate the most difficult ones there. Yeah. And in my first now, 5 months that I've been here, I've seen how many cases we can then, just by the fact that we talk to each other, solve. The other issue is just plainly communication directly between the state and business. I think we are in a lucky phase now because, for instance, unfortunately, the acting head of the state tax service, she is very outgoing. I have seen her in discussions directly with business for 2 and more hours where she just sits and takes on questions. And has the leadership of the service with her and just sometimes says, listen, remember that we need to work on this. The Bureau of Economic Security is kind of the same. I was at 2 conferences where the new head really got engaged with business on what they have already been doing, what they needed to be doing still, and there are still a lot of challenges. But I think we are at a quite unique point where there are at least the people who do not refuse to engage directly with business, because in the end it comes for me down to that: sit together and talk about it. I have experienced Ukraine since the 90s, and for the longest time, when 2 sides met, it was 2 monologues, and it still happens, but there's no interactive dialogue. This right now in the job I'm doing, I feel has changed, and I want to push that as much as I can by really motivating the concerned people to really just try it. We have an issue in the tax field right now where there's a lot of kind of wrong information because of lacking communication. There's also a lot of political manipulation on it. And I just suggested, why don't you sit together for a weekend and try to do something, not like a hackathon, but like sit together and try to do what you want from the business and see if it is as easy as you pretend it is, because business sales is not that easy. Just sit together, have some sandwiches and some tea or Coke and see what comes out, because this is something that has been done in Ukraine before. And I think direct communication is still key to make the trust, to improve the trust.
Yeah, thank you. Not only in Ukraine, I think it's really important in this country too. What do you think can Germany and Ukraine learn from each other? Final question from me.
That's probably part of my motivation to come back to. I think Ukraine has shown us in an incredible way how they stood up to the Russian aggression. I know that the word resilient is kind of not always seen as the best because it kind of led to us thinking, oh, the Ukrainians will deal by themselves. No, they are tired, and the 4 years of war have taken the toll. But whatever happens, they stand up again, and they just carry on. And like on the 24th of May, when so many windows were shattered in the center of Kiev, I went out the next morning also to put some shards of glass into the trash bin. There were so many people who were already doing this, just doing this. So I think what we can learn from Ukraine is never be defeated. Just stand up, just go on. And the other thing is also in the business side. In Germany, I think we have to learn to be more less risk averse. When I speak to German business, very often I'm amazed at how afraid they are. And this isn't, of course, also a question now on your question on investing in a country at war. There are huge advantages if you're among the first. You can really make profits here, and then you will have a huge advantage on business that comes afterwards, but you need to be less risk averse. And I have talked to big German business, even while I was still in Germany, And they said, oh, no, we're just waiting for the orders by the government. And I was like, why? I mean, there's a war going on. You know that your product will be needed big time. Why didn't you start earlier? So and also the creativity here of individuals. We have seen it in the Miltech. I mean, the incredible progress that has been made since after I left as ambassador and before I came back in terms of military technology is something that we really have to look at and learn from. And I think, fortunately, we're already doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience. And I can see Teresa has a question. Teresa, over to you. Would you like to read it out?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Yeah, thank you very much. Very, very interesting to hear. And I was just curious to better understand what the channels are through which the private sector representative may reach your office, and if it's also possible to do this anonymously.
So the first thing is, no, it can't be done anonymously. We just have a lovely video on that on our Facebook site. Why not? We have a very good internet site where you have to kind of check boxes to see if you're eligible to hand in a complaint. And these are pretty easy. It can only be business against state. It's not business to business. You as a business have to have tried once on your own via an administrative procedure. The trial phase has not yet started. We're really in the pre-trial phase, and the fact that you're complaining about has to be less old than 1 year. So these kind of 4 boxes you have to tick, and then you can just download the documents we need to evaluate the complaint. And in a space of 10 days, we give the business representative an answer if we will take on the complaint, and then we will have one of our investigators here. They will get in touch with the business and they will talk it through and see what the best way there is to defend the business interests.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Now over to Marie-Louise Beck.
Oh, I wrote to you.
Yeah, no, you can.
Okay.
You're very welcome to talk.
Okay. Having been in Ukraine for so long, and I remember in 2014, Anka Feldhusen already was enthused and convinced that the country was on the right track. I think we just have to congratulate you that you decided to go back and that you still are the ambassador for the country. My question is how your work is related to all those anti-corruption institutions which the country has.
Thank you, Marie, for those warm words. And you have to unmute yourself, I think. Yeah, or mute yourself. Yeah, now it's better. No echo any longer. Thank you. Always happy to see you. We go back a long way here in Ukraine. Indeed. We have memoranda of understanding with the other anti-corruption organizations, with NAZK, NABU, SAPO. We work together closely, but we also have complaints, for instance, against NABU by business sometimes. So we have expert groups with them too. They are part of the law enforcement system, and perhaps here a few numbers. Our complaints deal about 52% with tax issues, and then law enforcement is the second one, but down to 13%. And then we have customs at 7, regulators at 5, and local administrations at 5 too. So tax is the biggest part. But law enforcement, we just, as I said, we talk to them regularly, sometimes about concrete complaints, sometimes about things that are just going wrong. And we get I meet the heads of these institutions on a regular basis because I know them and because I want to exchange our views on things. But we are not concretely going after corruption cases. So we are not an investigating body. We are very rarely getting complaints on corruption, and then it is mainly by local administration. I visited a company that had that once, but this is pretty rare these days. And I was told, for instance, that that's perhaps interesting by this company, that whenever there's international money involved, and very often during the recovery projects now, it is mainly done by international money, then there is no corruption because the local administrations know that the compliance and the control of the international bodies is much higher, and they will not fall into old habits, let's put it like this. So there's some positive progress in parts of Ukraine too. I know that corruption in other spheres is coming up again when we talk about mobilization, reservation of soldiers, but this is actually not our issue.
Ask how big is the staff?
Yes, I have 40 people in total. I think 23 lawyers, and then we have a communications team, an operations team. I have 2 deputies. So it's like a mid-sized embassy. But they're all Ukrainian, and just for those who are interested, my Ukrainian has become really is finally progressing because I'm speaking Ukrainian the whole day, and I learned a lot more words in the tech sphere and the law enforcement sphere and other things, which actually I really like.
Wow, that's very, very impressive. Thank you. Thanks also for your remark. Yeah. Okay, we have many questions coming up now, and I will ask the participants who post the questions to also read them. We have enough time, so I don't have to read the questions, but please come in with your questions. And the next one is Igor Olekov, please. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the work which you do, which is very, I would say, contributory to the business environment in Ukraine, and everyone appreciates in the business community the work. But my question, first one, relates to the fact that in terms of the legal strength of the decisions of the business ombudsman, there is no legal, strictly speaking, no legal authority for business ombudsman decision to prevail over the enforcement authorities or tax authorities. And do you not feel actually disappointed that actually some of these decisions, they are kind of recommendations which are often ignored in practice by the authorities, and maybe there should be some I mean, as a lawyer, of course, in Ukraine, I would prefer to have the authority for these decisions to be taken, but maybe there should be some public campaign to actually change the approach and adopt some action, because some of the issues, as I understand, which Ombudsman discovered are very important, but they have been discussed and, for over 10 years, some of them. And they are not resolved, and this is not very satisfactory, to be honest, at least from the point of view of the regulation of the business. And the second question which I have, whether you have considered to use AI tools which are now developing to kind of not only react to the facts of some violations or potentially corruption or some other facts, but actually researching these complaints and actually making kind of predictions which authorities in Ukraine work efficiently and which are not, and giving kind of public recommendations what should be changed, or maybe rankings that actually the authorities, they understand that any of their actions, they are producing a lot of complaints to the ombudsman, and this these are analyzed and you are quickly making conclusions and recommendations what should be changed in the authorities' behavior.
Yeah, thank you. I think the answer to the second question is easier. Yes, we do use AI, but mainly to look through the documents that we are given with the complaint, because sometimes the business also uses AI and sends us 2,000-page documents. So it's good to have something that summarizes that, but then we never rely on it. I mean, I work with lawyers, and they rely in the end on their own competences and skills. As for the rankings and kind of, I think even though we have a lot of complaints, we can still do it without AI, and we know where the problems are. And that brings me to the first question. Yes, it is sometimes frustrating. I mean, we keep track of the recommendations that we gave to the government, and we regularly tell the public how many have been implemented and which have not. In our yearly reports, you can read about that, but also anytime on our website. There are a few that we were really very happy for the business of. That is the system of riskiness of a taxpayer that we've worked on with the tax service in the last 2 years, and the complaints on that issue have gone steadily down. That's why tax complaints are not any longer over 70, but only 52%. So that was a real success. And in the recovery sphere, we have another example where it took the government only 1 year to change something that was really difficult in putting together proposals for tenders of recovery projects for the private business when it came to the pricing of building materials and the pricing of building services. This said, yes, of course, there are lots of things that, lots of spheres where we do not seem to be able to change things. I mean, implementation of court decisions is one thing, and the general system of the general state of the judicial system in Ukraine is something that has been my favorite subject, or at least the subject that occupied me the most since 2014, actually. But I think with the concrete examples that we can give to the government, we are more trustworthy than others, and also than AI. Yeah. And also, we do have a track record. I mean, we have 62% of the cases that we take on that we solve successfully. As I already said, even if we don't, usually business is happy because they get our legal point of view, and that helps them in the ongoing court procedure. And a very, I find, impressive figure is we have saved, in those 11 years, we have saved over €1 billion to business in Ukraine. And that is much more than we cost. So I think we are an effective tool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there other questions, even though you don't have to put the questions in the chat. If you have them, you can just go right ahead. Otherwise, I'd be interested, actually, I've been wondering, what are the sectors and the types of companies that most frequently file complaints with the Ombudsman's office?
We have about 85% Ukrainian companies, 15 foreign, and out of these, 2/3, almost 70% of small and medium enterprise, and a little 30% of bigger companies. And I think that's easy to understand. Big international companies, they usually have more money for lawyers, more capital to wait out a court process. So they have the big business associations, and of course they have the embassies to back them. So they have less of a motivation to come to us. They do so. We have just been able to help Philip Morris have a criminal procedure ended that had been hanging over their heads for 5 years. Sometimes we do have cases that take much longer than the 90 days, but we kind of keep on if we see there is possibility to be successful. So it's mainly really small and medium enterprise. It is a lot from the oblasts that are close to the front line, because this is where very often small entrepreneurs, like one person or 1 to 3 person business is active, because nothing else works there. You have to be extremely flexible in those parts of the country. And there are so many, for instance, programs now to help these little businesses that people get lost, actually, and business get lost and the state gets lost too. So we have quite a few complaints that they were eligible for a state program, and then the state says yes but no, or you have done something wrong and now the law enforcement comes after you. So I think we really are very happy each time we can help a small business to correct this thing, and very often it's not even criminal intent. It's just sometimes a Kafka story, or just plain refusal to take responsibility and apply common sense. So these are probably the most satisfying cases that we have, but we do have really big cases also where you even have court rulings, but where, for instance, sanctions come in, where the end beneficiary of a business is not clear. I just say trust funds in Cyprus, and where we walk a fine line, because there is a court ruling and the state should implement it. But I can also understand if the state doesn't want to have a person that is affiliated with Russia benefit from the money we save the company. So these are the really difficult cases where we talk about more behind the scenes.
Thank you. Thank you. Most interesting. Now, let me check the audience once more, maybe give you some time to think about questions that you might all have. Natalia, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the conversation, and generally to have the opportunity to gain the insights from your work. I'm Natalie. I'm a Ukrainian, but I'm currently studying here in Germany. And I would like to ask you 2 questions that are fascinating me. And the first one, I want to ask, what do you think have changed between the Ukraine in 90s and now, and especially in this mindset of business that we have now and the rule of law in general? Since you're connected since 90s with Ukraine, I guess you have a really broad perspective on that. And the second one would be, what do you think, which role do play young generation now in general in the transforming Ukraine, that more transparent values that we want to carry now in Ukraine?
Yeah, that is, of course, a question that I could probably talk hours about. Like, what is the difference between Ukraine in the 90s, when you were probably not even born, a long time afterwards you were born, and now it was a post-Soviet state I came to in 94, and you could see it everywhere. Kiev was a gray city, beautiful in summer, but still a gray city. You still needed to bring champagne and sweets if you just wanted a meeting when you were getting married. A friend of mine was getting married to get a date for your wedding. Yeah. So there was daily corruption. I still remember, even with diplomatic cars, because I had a very old one, the militiamen would stop us and try to get money out of us. So that was the Ukraine I left in 97. The Ukraine I came back to in 2010 was honestly, Yanukovych had just been elected president. From the mindset, still very much the same, even though the country looked different, because it was preparing actually for Euro 2012, and Kiev had become a really bright city here, and things. Militiamen was changed against joint patrols of the police of women and men that were actually able to speak some English to talk to the visitors for the European Championship that Ukraine was doing together with Poland. So on the outside, already in 2012, the country had changed, but it was for me. And that's why my posting from 2010 to 2015 was actually 2 postings. It was before the Revolution of Dignity, and then it was kind of during, and then it was really, Ukraine had really changed after the end of the Revolution of Dignity and in 2014, at the end of February 2014. And you asked for the young generation. I think the young generation played a huge role in 2014 to push the country towards Europe. It was clear that and I remember the first demonstration in November 2013, where I went with my son and 4 of his classmates. It was mainly families with children and they were all having European flags or little bands on the children's buggies. And they were expressing their desire to get away from the old Soviet habits and go towards a brighter future in the European Union. And ever since 2014, I think that this country has been on the right track, very often by going back a step and shooting itself in the foot, but it has been on a track towards Europe. And as awful as it sounds, the full-scale invasion in 22 and Ukraine's applying for European Union membership and the European Union and its member states replying favorably to that was another big step forward. I always told also Berlin that we need to support this, not because I personally love this country so much, but because it gives us leverage to change Ukraine for the better. The implementation of the European acquis, as difficult as it is, and also for Ukrainian business, there are European rules that are very, very difficult for Ukrainian business first to understand and then to implement. It is the future that this country wants to a large extent. And the Business Ombudsman Council, from my point of view, is also there to help Ukrainian business adapt to these rules, understand the sense. I mean, for instance, ecologic rules. Many businesses tell me here, yeah, but we're in a war. We can't take care of the quality of air or water or so. And I tell them, no, you have to, because it's for your children that you're doing that. And your business will have to adapt to that. You will have to do it anyway at some point. Do it now. It's for your children. It's not for the European Union. No. And these things take a lot of convincing and talking, but I see the role of my institution as being part of that communication.
Thank you so much.
And can I perhaps just say that my biggest wish would be that all of you who are now going to school in Germany or other EU countries or studying there will at some point be able to come back and help the country rebuild, because the lack of human resources is probably the most important problem Ukrainian business has right now. I think the Ukrainian economy has done incredible things since the full-scale invasion by Russia, but it cannot grow any longer. It has kind of outgrown its potential. It needs people now to continue to grow.
Yeah, that's my also very big dream, to come back and apply my knowledge that I gain here in Germany and in France, and come back and strengthen my country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Matthias Brüggemann, please. You're still muted.
But it's now working? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, hello. Very good to see you again. My first question would be the change that you became ombudsperson is a regular one, or there was a shift because of something? And then you mentioned you saved $1 billion for business. Can you explore a little bit more on the biggest cases? And the last question is: are you involved somehow in the case of Privatbank and the oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky and something? Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you again too. Easy answer to the last question. We are not. This has been in the sphere of court proceedings for as long as I can remember, actually. Yeah, and I think the British courts have issued rulings on that. On the first question, I came back to Germany and did, as Karin Losse said, my job as Director for Stabilization and Civilian Crisis Prevention. And I actually really learned a lot about project financing there. I did a lot of project financing in Ukraine. But I think, as many of my colleagues who have served here with me, with the beginning of the full-scale war, the sense of purpose is kind of lacking as long as the war goes on. And since I have always been sent back to Ukraine by the foreign ministry, I gained knowledge about this country and on our bilateral relations, and have access to the government here that I thought I could put to better use in Ukraine. So when I was asked to apply for this role as business ombudsperson, I thought about it because business is really not something that I have dealt with a lot. But I talked to our HR department in the foreign ministry here, and they actually said, no, we think it would be a good idea for you to do that, because you would serve also our interests well. And I needed the okay from the leadership of the ministry to get a leave of absence. I'm now on a leave of absence for 2 years, which happens honestly regularly at my level. Many colleagues go to the European External Action Service. I took, and they have to take leave of absence too. I now have a contract until 31st of December 27, and then I will, well, let's see what happens. I can prolong for another 2 years, but I go back then to the Foreign Service of Germany here and finish my career until I retire there. So that's for the first one. And the second one, the 1 billion that we saved. I cannot speak about like very concrete cases. It's the biggest one we had was over 2 billion hryvnia, and I don't even know exactly when that was, so I cannot translate it into euros exactly. But it is mainly a lot of money that we save the business or get them back from the state tax service. Like, for instance, VAT that they are due to get back and they don't. These are probably the biggest numbers for companies that export. And you cannot imagine how many companies there are that export from Ukraine. I visited a company in Chernihiv that is, and Chernihiv is really towards the Belarusian-Russian border. And they are a big producer of PET bottle, not of the bottles, but the metal things that they produce to the intent of the customer of how the PET bottle should look like. And that is produced in Chernihiv and then exported. And so the issue of VAT here comes up for companies like that. And there we can be I think, of very great help. Sometimes it's also the evaluation of the customs value that can really change a lot on what the company has to pay for customs fees. So the 1 billion is over the 11 years more of what in Germany would call Kleinvieh macht auch Mist. But we do have a few big cases. I'm just not at liberty to talk about them.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question and your answer. And I think we might be closing now very slowly, because we still would like we would very much appreciate if you could all evaluate this session. But first of all, let me really thank you, Anka Feldhusen, for your time, for all your really interesting, fascinating information, and thanks to everybody who asked questions and who participated. That was really, really interesting. A very interesting spotlight today. Now, if I could ask my colleagues to start with a poll, it would be very helpful if you all stayed on a minute. It's really fast to answer these questions. Number one, whether you're satisfied with the event. Number 2, if you've met participants in organizations who are relevant to your work. And number 3, and last one, I gained relevant knowledge. Thank you. And last but not least, I would like to draw your attention to some upcoming events. You know that on the 25th of June, the Ukraine Recovery Conference will take place in Danzig, in Gdansk, and we're planning to have a spotlight to debrief on that, but we don't have a date yet. It will be shared as soon as possible. Then on July the 2nd, we are having a spotlight on water resilience in Ukraine, Inform, Learn and Connect. And on the 30th of July, we'll have a session just on anti-corruption and practice with a representative from NABU. But that all will be announced again in more detail. Okay, so let me close. You're welcome to put comments in the chat, or if you want to say something, we have another few minutes left. I have to say, for me, this was one of the most interesting spotlights so far. And I really appreciate that you spent this time with us.
Well, I'm just
Yes,
going through the comments. Thank you very much for all of you. And some of you I remember well from former times about the really nice feedback you gave. I think it is important, and that's why I agreed to do this today, to make the institution of the Business Ombudsman Council more known, because even though my predecessor also traveled a lot, was a lot in the media, Ukraine is a big country, and we need to remind business that we're here to help them. So I try to speak about what we do wherever I can. Because we had kind of a lull in complaints in the last year, because we had also solved a big problem. That was a big chunk of the problem, the complaints before. But we need to have a certain level of complaints to understand what the systemic problems of the Ukrainian economy and the investment climates are. And I think we're back on a good track. I think by the end of this year, the complaints will have gone up by about 20%. So we will have a lot information to chew on and to talk to the government about with.